which was a law basically designed to steal Native American land. And it became law May 28, 1830. In the early 1800s, the United States government began a systematic effort to remove American Indian tribes from the Southeast. We're talking Florida, Georgia, that kind of area. The Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Muskogee Creek, the Seminole, and the original Cherokee nations had been established as autonomous nations. That means basically independent nations in the southeastern United States. George Washington originally had proposed to deal with Native American tribes. Acculturation is what he called it. Acculturation, the root word being culture. And it was well underway among the Cherokee and the Choctaw by the turn of the 19th centuries. What is acculturation? What did George Washington mean by that? Well, Indians were encouraged to convert to Christianity, learn to speak and read English, and adopt European-style economic practices such as the individual ownership of land and other property, including, in some instances, the ownership of African slaves. So some of these Native American tribes owned African slaves. Thomas Jefferson's policies were very similar. They echoed Washington, respect the Indians' rights to their homelands, and allow the 5 civilized tribes, is what they were called, to remain east of the Mississippi, provided that they adopt behavior and cultural practices that were compatible with those of the local colonies. Basically, act like the other Americans that are there, we'll treat you like them, was Jefferson's policy, basically. Andrew Jackson, however, sought a policy of military action for the removal of the Indians from these lands and worked towards creating a law for said Indian removal. He wanted to kick them out using the military. In the 1829 State of the Union address, Jackson called for removal. So, the Indian Removal Act was put in place to give the southern states lands that had belonged to the Native Americans. That was the goal of the law. The act was passed in 1830, although dialogue had been ongoing since 1802 between Georgia and the federal government concerning such an event. As time passed, southern states began to speed up the process by posing the argument that the deal between Georgia and the federal government had no contract, and that the southern states could pass the law themselves without the federal government. This scheme forced the national government to pass the Indian Removal Act on May 28, 1830, in which President Jackson agreed to divide the United States territory west of the Mississippi into districts for tribes to replace the land from which they had been removed. In the 1823 case of Johnson v. McIntosh, the United States Supreme Court handed down a decision stating that Indians could occupy and control lands within the United States, but they could not officially own those lands. Jackson viewed the Union as a federation of highly esteemed states, so respected, as was common before the American Civil War. He opposed Washington's policy of establishing treaties with the American Indians as if they were foreign nations. Thus, creating Indian jurisdictions was a violation of state sovereignty under Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. As Jackson saw it, either Indians comprised of sovereign states, which would violate the Constitution, or they were subject to the laws of the existing states of the Union. Jackson urged the Native Americans to assimilate, become like, and to obey state laws. Further, he believed that he could only accommodate the desire for Indian self-rule in federal territories, which meant resettlement west of the Mississippi where most federal lands were. So, hope you're learning and I hope you're having fun.